Welcome to a brand new episode of Sequel Rights, the podcast where we take a look at the franchises that make you go, they made how many of those? And we give each and every sequel a fair trial. My name is Justin Camps, and I'm here with
Elizabeth Helly
and
Tyler Hymanson.
Oh, and we are back for the first brand new episode of 2023.
cleaning off the cobwebs, getting back out there.
That's right. This is round 2 of the intro because I effed it up in the first time.
It's been so long.
Yeah, you know, we just we went through all the Christmas episodes we could, and now we're back for some horror, which we haven't fully dove into for a bit, which is exciting. This week, to kick this year off, we are going to be talking about the Scream franchise.
Scream.
Which is exciting, and I think this is one that is basically built for us. As we go through, you'll see why. And I'm sure you already know because you've seen the movie, probably. Anyways, thanks for being here. Before we get too far into things, Elias, where can people reach out to us?
Yeah, you can find us on email and let us know your suggestions for future franchise and episodes at sequelrights@gmail.com, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Sequel Rights.
And please rate and review wherever you're listening. That helps us find new listeners and bring old listeners back into the fold, or share it out on your social media. Get some Mastodon toots out there.
Oh my God. Are they really called toots?
They are, yeah.
I think I heard that before.
People still talking about Mastodon? I never got into it.
I don't think so.
It's too much.
We're so old now.
It's too much. Well, you may or may not be aware that there is a brand new Scream movie coming out this March 10th. And that's why we chose to do this. And, you know, there is actually, you might be like, wasn't there just a Scream movie? And in fact, there was just last year. Yeah. They're going back to the days of new
every
movie
year.
a year, which, you know, for us is great.
Yeah,
we'll see how it is for general audience.
We should talk about our history with the franchise, because before you guys accidentally spoil anything for me, I was like, I have not seen any of these movies at all.
Crazy.
So this was my first time seeing the original. I was watching it with 2 of my roommates who are significantly younger than me, and they also were like, we've seen Scary Movie, and we've seen the MTV Movie Awards parodies, and this has all been parodied so much. And I was like, I've seen that as well, but I've never actually really sat down and watched Scream.
That's funny.
So it was fun. How about you guys?
I definitely had that same experience where the parodies were taken in before the actual movie, but I'd certainly watched it. But not in a way that I super remembered or appreciated. So I had a great time rewatching it for this.
Yeah, I feel like for me, some of the things in this movie are burned into my brain because it definitely, you know, it came out in 1996 when I'm full on still in elementary school. And it definitely was, you know, out at a time where this is super rated R, not supposed to be watching. But I feel like it was one of those ones where maybe a friend got their parents to rent it or something, and I saw it kind of early because there's things in the opening sequence that are burned in my mind and are really great. And so I saw it you know, I definitely, you know, because going back to this, I was like, oh, they just put all the scary movies up on HBO Max as well. And once I finish this movie, I'm like, I'm going to go watch Scary Movie 1 because I remember thinking those were freaking hilarious back in the day. And I, you know, looked to see when it came out, thinking it came out probably pretty close to Scream, but it was actually in the year 2000.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, I definitely had seen Scream before that. So I don't think it was a situation where I had seen Scary Movie first and then saw Scream.
And then have you seen all of them that we're going to be watching? Or?
I have seen all but the most recent one, the 5th one, Scream 2022.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I've seen all of them. I really wanted to see that one. I just didn't make it out in theaters because it was still in the, you know, should we not go?
Oh, right.
Almost post-pandemic or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, and so also we should say this one is on Paramount Plus, right?
Is that where you watched it?
I did, and then I got confused because I watched it by typing Scream into Roku, and then when I came back later, I was like, wait, where was I? watching it, but I didn't want to like click on the wrong streaming service because then I wouldn't remember like where I had, because I had to like pause it to do something, and yeah, it was a big mess. But anyway, I eventually figured out it was Paramount Plus.
There's someone in my household that owns all of them on our Apple TV, so that was convenient for me.
I
had that was the same here. I had just bought like the bundle and Scream 4 in order to be ready to watch Scream 5, which is Scream 4.
Yeah, because you were saying none of the rest are part of any streaming services. They're
I don't
all
think
rental.
so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was like planning to watch it in theaters and just didn't make it.
Shout out to our Los Angeles locals. Was at Revenge of yesterday in beautiful Glassell Park. It's an awesome comic book and pinball store, and they had the box set Blu-ray of all of the Screams on display there, so you can go down there and pick it up.
Yeah,
because I watched the 4K version or whatever. That's because they put out the 4K version of Scream like in ahead of the newest one. And yeah, I mean, sorry that you had to watch a Miramax film.
Well, it didn't. Apparently, it's not actually Miramax. It was like Dimension,
right?
Yeah,
which is like secret Miramax.
Secret Miramax.
But I mean,
I did get some nostalgia seeing that old Dimension logo come up.
Yeah,
it is Russ McGowan.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. We'll get to it.
Yeah,
we'll get to it.
We'll get to it.
Start the movie.
But yeah, so that's kind of like, I'm a huge Scream fan. I love it. I'm not going to say that I know like all the ins and outs of everything. I was like, I remember who the killers are in this one, and I don't think I remember in the other ones because I haven't seen them for forever.
Right. I did know like some of the people that were for sure going to live because I was like, okay, I know that some of these people are in like other movies, but I didn't really know. Like, it kept me guessing.
Yeah, I'm super interested to hear your perspective because I feel like the number of people who have never seen Scream are like increasingly rare. Why don't we dive into it? Scream, the original one from 1996.
Hello?
Hello?
Who is this?
You tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Someone is playing a deadly game.
It all began with a scream over 911.
Someone who's seen one too many scary movies. Now, he's taken his love of fear
Hello?
Hello, Sydney.
one step too far.
Do you like scary movies?
What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a scary movie. Number one, you can never have sex.
Okay.
I was like, there wasn't a better place maybe to end that trailer, but it was so long. I was like, I can't. It's so long. We ended it with words of wisdom from Burt Gummer's son himself.
Yeah, I miss Jamie Kennedy a little bit from the Tremors, even though he's a complete weirdo, but he's very good in this movie.
He is great.
He is good in this movie.
I mean, he gets to have like one of the most iconic moments of the film. Speaking of iconic, this opening sequence is just like fucking amazing.
It's one of probably one of the more famous cold opens.
Oh boy, do I just hear about cold opens constantly. Everybody loves a cold open. It's actually sort of mandatory now for horror movies, pretty much. Especially in the streaming era, because that's what makes them not turn the movie off.
Yep.
But it does kind of like fall apart later when everything comes out, but I'm like, but what was the point of the Drew Barrymore stuff?
Well, it's like, I think when the movie first came out, they did kind of like a Psycho-like thing where they like made it look like she was maybe the main character.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And so when you went to go see it, like, she was like a bigger name already at that
certainly.
point. So you go and see it like, oh, it's the new Drew Barrymore movie. And it's a horror film, and then she dies within the first.
But it's definitely before the like Adam Sandler rom-com era of Drew Barrymore, like far before. So she looks so young.
Yeah, this is like height of height of her fame, or maybe
I think it's like just before. I think it's kind of like her. Yeah. She's an adult now and she's back, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I was
not since E.T.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean,
not since E.T. I was gonna try to look up her IMDb here and see, but it's gonna take me a second.
She's a fire starter or whatever too. Right?
If you guys want to vamp,
yeah, I mean, we're certainly it's not quite Charlie's Angels.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, before this, it was like
but you could tell she just looks so much younger than
she was
those
in Batman
movies
Forever,
that we know.
Wayne's World 2. I don't know.
Yeah, so it was like little roles. She was definitely not in her like headlining era yet, but no, she's great because she's not she's not the dumb girl. Like she doesn't really do much that's like that dumb. She like makes a few errors here and there, but they're not like the most stereotypical like joke things.
Yeah,
either.
This is like. I just love this opening sequence because it's like full of things that I had nightmares about when I was a kid. I had this like nightmare about like being chased by some. I mean, I was like, well, maybe it came from this. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I had this nightmare that was specifically about like being chased by someone in my home and then like screaming for my parents, and in seeing them and them just like ignoring or not hearing. That was like a scary
That's the
thing.
saddest part for sure. That they're right there.
Yeah.
Like.
And so that happens in this and it's just like horrifying. And then I have like the thing that's always burned in my mind is that shot of her like hanging from the tree.
Yeah.
With the guts out and the fast zoom in there. It's just so good. And it sets up the conceit of like the phone call and how this guy is like steeped in horror lore and like all this stuff.
I'm actually very curious if you're watching this with some youths.
Yeah.
Of them being like, wait, you just you'd pick up the phone and
right.
somebody you wouldn't know and you'd just be like, yeah.
Yeah, they were just kind of like, oh, why would she even like talk to this guy? Like what's the deal? But I mean, they're not that much. They're not teens. They're adults, so they do know a little bit of fun. But we did have a discussion of like, wait, is it Star 69?
Yeah.
Like, was that a thing already at this point?
I mean, she was dead, so she couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. But later on in the movie, when
it would have gone to it. Well,
right.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
But.
So, anyways, yeah. But we did talk kind of like about the phones and
That's funny.
The walking around and stuff, but really they just kept being like, oh, I remember the like what's up like one, and, like that was like the main thing that they were like, oh yeah,
it's a scary movie, right?
That is, I think so. It is really funny. Yeah, they have that part where like the Ghostface mask has like his tongue out, like it is funny to think about how. Sorry, apologies if you can hear my daughter crying. It's her bedtime and she doesn't want to go. What was I going to say? Oh, it is funny to think like there's a moment that I think is really masterful for someone who like has, who grew up during the like, non-cell phone era and everything where like the parents go to call 911 and they pick up the phone, but like Drew Barrymore still has the phone in her hands and so she can hear her crying. Yeah. It's funny to think that there's people that would watch it and be like, I don't understand how that's like what?
Like, I don't get how that's kind of remind yourself because you're like,
that's how that worked.
Wait, yeah.
But it's like in that moment you're like, oh man, that's such a smart way to use that. And like, I love
and terrifying.
Just in general, the smart way where they like incorporate the fact that cell phones were like starting to be a thing in this, but people were still like, how did they make a phone call from outside the house? I think that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's just really iconic. It's done. It's directed. There's something that's really crazy in this movie is that most of it's shot like insanely wide, like to the point where like the edges of the frame were distorted. And it's a lot of these pans, and the camera does kind of pick up and move, but it's a lot of like crazy wide and shot, and has this really voyeuristic, intrusive feel that it feels. The thing that I think that people loved about this movie is that it's meta as hell. Like it's one of the things where it's like it is the horror movie for horror fans,
right?
That have and leading up to that point, the genre had kind of been dead. There's not anything from the earlier 90s that that harkens back to the classics of the 70s, or even Wes Craven at this point.
Well, and everything had gone like sequel crazy. Like they even have a whole meta riff about like, oh, all the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels were crappy, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
stuff, like,
he only directed the first one.
right.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about this because I was like looking up like what other horror movies were coming out at that time, and it was like Halloween 6, but right before this, and you know, like Leprechaun 2, and all these like really long in the tooth sequels. I think it was like one of the later Candyman movies was out previously before this too. Yeah, and like the thing with this movie is it came out on December 20th.
What?
In 1996.
Oh damn!
Wow.
And in that time frame, it was up against Evita same day.
Oh my god!
And
right for me.
And it made more money than Evita.
Wow.
It's like the theatrical take was 173 million for this movie, according to.
That's crazy to not go for
the
Halloween.
numbers.com.
That is I guess you want the kids out of school.
And it was just like, I mean, so this movie was like a total phenomenon, and that's why we're on scene number 6 at this point. And it's just like crazy to think like what horror movie nowadays could come out like on Christmas Day basically and make that much money. Like none of them.
Yeah.
Violent Night just made a lot of money, but not that much money. Honestly.
Yeah. And I mean, that movie is not going to become like a cultural phenomenon or anything.
Well, it's going to become Violent Night too. Right. Already greenlit.
That's true. That's true. But there's not, you know, like I don't know.
We'll see. No,
I was just like,
agree.
this is like it's like a crazy phenomenon.
It was outside of like people that don't normally see horror were seeing it. Yeah, for sure.
And it totally like revitalized the like slasher genre, and like, you know, then we're getting all the urban legends and.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, we were little children, but I'm sure if you were in high school and you didn't see this movie, you were like the most lame loser.
Well, like if your parents
even among the losers, the losers were seeing it and being like, "Oh yeah, you know, you're a loser for not seeing it."
And that's the thing to like talk about of Kevin Williamson. This is his first script, and you know he's gone on to do a lot of things, but you know, created Dawson's Creek afterwards. Wrote, you know, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I think that it really captures youth of that era in a way that was not being pandered to, and that it wasn't, you know, dumb teenagers being killed by, you know, some tired franchise thing. And I think that is why it had such staying power and was so. I mean, like I was also like shocked. I was also a bit shocked going back to watch it now, and like happy, I guess, that there's not much. I don't think there's much in it that I was like. Usually when you go back and watch these, not that this movie, it's pretty old at this point, but usually when you go back and watch these movies, you're like, ooh, oh god, that joke. I don't feel like there's really much in there that is like super. Well,
there's no black people or people of color in any way, but there was nothing like really bad, because everything they're saying is like, you know, when they're like, oh, there's a dumb chick with big tits or whatever, like that's not really offensive because they're joking around about the trope, and like. And everything that is offensive is like the people who are saying it are mean and bad, like, oh, your mother's a slut or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I will say that the plot of her being like, yeah, she's not having sex, and her mom died less than a year ago.
Right. Well, but that's meant to be insane. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, like
I was like, oh, these like incel killers going on here.
Right.
Which is, you know, prescient today as well.
Yeah.
So I just meant like, obviously there's always stuff when you go back, but I didn't feel like there was anything that stood out like, whoa, like maybe we shouldn't be watching this or whatever.
Right. No, exactly.
I was glad that it was like, that's I think another reason why it holds up so well, because they didn't resort to like, you know, really putting people down or anything like that.
Yeah. It's interesting because I didn't really know that Henry Winkler was like in this movie, and he's like totally not credited. And I guess it said that he didn't want to like take attention away from the young actors, which is very sweet and cute. But also I'm like, that would never happen today, because if anything, like him being in it would like help people. But this was probably before he was in his real like I'm doing cameos left and right.
Yeah,
it was
before
like an
the
early
revival.
one. Yeah,
I was like, was it more about because he was such an asshole and weird that he didn't want to be? I mean, everyone's gonna know.
Yeah,
it's
he
him,
said he didn't want to take attention away from them, so, which makes sense. That's very cute. But yeah.
He's fantastic in this movie.
And then what's the deal with like Liev Schreiber? Like, why was he in it?
Just for some news footage of the kill.
Like, was he friends with somebody, or was he just not that famous yet, or like what the?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay,
96.
I forgot to look into it.
There's also a Linda Blair cameo.
Right.
She's the
and then
one of the
Robert
reporters.
Englund or whatever.
Yeah.
I assumed that was him.
Oh, I think that's actually Wes Craven.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I
Wes
guess- yeah, it's
Craven?
Wes
Oh,
Craven,
okay. I just assumed. I was like, that's got to be
the janitor that's like, huh?
Yeah.
Just up his friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like, there's that one part where Tatum 2 is like, you sound like Wes Carpenter.
Yeah.
So funny. I mean, it's just great that they get to, poke fun at all the horror tropes and there's just so much in this movie that I'm like, oh, this is a movie that is like made for people who love horror, people who love sequels, people who love movies in general. It's like, I think that's another reason why it has maintained, because it also is like a gateway for a lot of people like me at that age, or younger people, like maybe teenagers as well, like into all these things about horror and stuff. Like maybe this was the first thing they saw, and now they're like, oh man, I got to go back and watch like Halloween. They're talking about
it's almost like a course, a crash course.
Yeah.
Afterwards, you feel like, oh, I like sat and took a very entertaining class, and now I can dissect all of the future horror.
You're forever going to remember that Jason was not the killer in Friday the 13th.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because that. I was watching that with these roommates, and obviously I know that. And so the movie, when he asked for that, I was like, no, it's not Jason, it's the mom. And they're like, why do you know that? I'm like, well, obviously I know that. Yeah. Like, I just know it. So.
And I also think that is a weirdly that baton pass of that kind of. I think that a lot of that 70s classic horror. I mean, there's long sequences of this movie where Halloween is just playing.
Yeah, a lot of it.
And I think that kind of crystallizing in that. Of the moment, youth culture, and having everybody in that movie really give a shit about, all of these movies that Wes and all of his friends had made 20 or 30 years ago at that point. I don't know. I think that we might not have the rich, robust horror culture that we have now if it wasn't for that kind of revitalization and also kind of making fun of it and also making something new of it. Like, it's a very inclusive... we're going to do this meta geeky thing, but it's like, come on in. It'll be, you'll still, there's still going to be blood. Don't worry.
And like it's like having it in such a huge movie like this, having all that nerdy discussion and stuff really like solidifies the like horror canon and everything for like a whole nother generation where they hear these people like gushing over all these like horror rules and all these things. It's like, it really like sets that, like our generation up for the love of horror that's out there now.
Well, it's cool too because it sets up all these rules that it tells you, and it sticks with them, but also subverts them at the exact same time, which is pretty cool. Or chooses, picks and chooses when to do it in order to, get around what you think is coming. So yeah.
Yeah, I know.
They give you all the answers.
Totally.
They give you all the clues, Mr. Policeman. But,
I know. I know one meta thing that went over my head. Like, obviously, when I first watched it, because I didn't know any of the people in it, but like the part when like Jamie Kennedy
is screaming,
Jamie, look behind you, Jamie, come on, and like Ghostface is back there. It's like, oh man. And also like, fuck, Ghostface, the icon of that, like, is fucking awesome. And the fact that they, I watch. There's like some very. Not really too much to watch it, like special features that I watched. And that basically, I guess when they were location scouting, they found that mask at one of these locations. And they tried to make their own version of it or something. And eventually just ended up licensing that mask because it was like too perfect.
Yeah, that's
So is the original mask supposed to be a take on the painting?
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I
So I think they end up having to license that.
So much skinnier than the painting.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah.
Plastic ain't cheap.
It's fucking great. And Ghostface, man, I don't know. I love Ghostface as just like a killer because I love, like, one other thing that I just love about this movie is that he seems, like the Ghostface killer is such like seems like a normal person and gets the shit kicked out of them all the time.
Well, no, it makes it more scary because they do get away. Yeah. But like, and then he keeps coming in a way that's like...
I love that it's just like, it just seems like, oh, it's just some dude in a thing.
Yeah.
And like, he's still going to get you, but you're going to like kick him and throw shit at him and he's going to fall down and be like, fuck, I need to get up. I think it's like that is part of like the endearing quality of Ghostface.
Right, yeah, it really is.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell you about like... how I went through this, trying to guess.
I was like, I don't know if we have to talk through like the whole plot. But let's...
I would love the emotional experience.
Right. So I was definitely like, okay, you know, there's a lot going on here. Like, oh, it's not gonna. I went back and forth on like, it is the boyfriend, it isn't the boyfriend, and they said it, and then for a while, for quite a while, I was really convinced. Like, I don't know how or why, but I think maybe it's Rose McGowan because she's just such a bad friend. Which is like, maybe they did it that way so that it would be kind of a red herring, but I don't really think so because I think most people wouldn't think it's her unless you've so. But she was just like such a crappy friend. She's like, well, you know, your mom was a whore. Yeah. Like, you know, and she's like, I mean, come on. I mean, you are not having sex with him. Maybe he did try to kill you. You know, I mean, what do you want? But I think it was just kind of like her attitude. But then I was like, no. And then at a certain point, I really did. I was like, okay, if we're listening to the rules here that Jamie Kennedy gave in the video store and we're, you know, actually like hearing what they're saying, I was like, I think at this point it has to be more than one person. Mm-hmm. So I was like, there's definitely two and that are still involved. And, you know, it was getting narrowed down, obviously, but then for a while I was like, Dewey kind of came back in the picture and I was like, oh, maybe he's involved, but he's just so stupid. I don't really think so.
Stupid and sweet.
Yeah. And then it was really getting down to the end and my roommates kept saying like, oh, we think it's Shaggy or whatever. Like they just called him Shaggy the whole time. I don't even know what his name was.
Matthew Lillard.
No, I know that, but the character, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, what is
Shaggy?
No, it's
Sean or something.
Like
Stewart. Okay. Stu. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So then I really started to feel like, okay, it was the boyfriend, but then they had sex. And so I was kind of like, well, I don't know. But yeah, I think when it did click for me when I was really like, it clearly has to be two people at this point because you can't turn back on all of the rules.
Yeah.
You know, like he gave all these rules. And so we have to stick to some of them. And they're going to subvert some of them, which I was pretty sure was the sex rule. Cause I was like, I'm pretty sure she lives because I knew she was going to be in later movies. Right. And I also had heard discourse before about how it's really great that she, you know, had sex and survived and like nothing happened to her as a direct result of that sex other than like, you know, the trauma. And of course, you know, like, but it wasn't like, oh, you had sex and now you must die. It was like, okay, well, you did have sex, but oh, well, you know? So I knew it wasn't going to be her, but yeah, I really did. I was like, okay, it's gotta be two guys at this point. And then but I did keep thinking about Drew Barrymore being like, well, what was the point of killing her if it's the boyfriend? And right. So yeah, it did really keep me guessing up to the very end.
Were you thrown off by the boyfriend Billy or whatever getting like stabbed and seemingly killed in the bedroom?
I think so. Yeah. But then as we were kind of getting, closer, I was like, well, either one or both of him and Jamie Kennedy is not really dead yet because somebody is going to have to pop up at the end. Yeah. So,
and they also have the comments about the blood.
Yes.
And he has very bright red fake blood.
Right. Well, and then I think the main thing for me was the line, I think when they're in their video store, and I don't even remember which one of them says it, but they're like, well, what would be the motive? And he's like, it's the new millennium. You don't even need a motive. Right. And so that was what told me like, okay, some of the rules will be broken because they specifically said that you don't need a motive for everything. And so I knew something. So I used that to be like, okay, that's what Drew Barrymore was, I guess. Yeah.
And Randy just being totally spot on about the dad being a red herring. And
Right.
So great.
Yeah.
I mean, their plan was pretty good, except that they were too crazy, I think.
Right.
They got overzealous.
Stabbing each other.
I was watching it with my wife, and she had seen it before, but like she didn't remember anything about it. And she was like constantly asking like, so who is it or whatever. Yeah. And she thought for a little bit that it was the cameraman.
Well, yeah, because he was one of the few people left. It's got to be someone we met. I was like, they're not breaking that rule.
Right.
You know, so
it's not going to be someone totally
Yeah, it got to the very end and I was like, it's either the cameraman, the boyfriend, the dad, or, you know, Stu or whatever. And then I was like, but I really feel like it's got to be more than one of them. And then that was right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I just think what else is I mean, this movie is just full of like iconic. The other like Tatum's death is another like totally iconic.
Oh boy,
iconic moment. The garage door. Yeah. I always forget. Like I remember every time I watch it, I remember that she gets killed by the garage door, but I forget that they have that like split second close up of her face getting smashed. And it's so brutal and gross. But
and I still don't even know like which one of them
did it
accidentally killed her. But then I was like, it doesn't really matter because they didn't actually even kill her. Like the garage door did, you know, like, and she climbed in there. So
it is funny how like it happens and then Ghostface kind of seems like,
all right, bye.
Well, it happened. There's that clip. There's so many. I had to cut these clips out because, like, you know, we're sequel.
Please,
absolutely.
This clip from Tatum actually, like, I've heard it pop up on TikTok or whatever. Like people use it virally nowadays, but this is a classic one.
No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
Right.
This is a good one. But what else is there? I mean, you know, I just love Matthew Lillard is so great. He's just going nuts in this movie.
Yeah, really
he did more than most of all these.
Yeah, and I just like really like I really remember him just being like so like distraught at the end too, just being like, I think you hurt me too much, man. Like, what did you do?
He's very funny in that moment where he's just like, you should call the police. It's like, I'm a sensitive boy. Like, I love there's peer pressure.
I think I'm dying.
Remember when he was in Twin Peaks?
Oh yeah,
crazy.
Classic. But he goes on to this amazing rant too.
Face it, baby. These days, you gotta have a sequel.
I just was like watching it again and being like, yes, this is the movie built for sequel rights, full of crazy references, and just you wait till we get to the next movies. I mean, you know, it's just like lots of stuff going.
Yeah, I do want to talk about Courtney Cox,
yes,
David Arquette, like. Oh my God!
Do you think they would fall in love in this instance?
Oh God, I mean, maybe because they're just both so terrible. She's obviously a horrible journalist, completely
no
corrupt.
morals. No morals.
And then he is like the dumbest.
But he gets an ice cream.
Sure.
He's just so sweet.
But just the fact that it's like, we're setting this curfew and I'm going to, and he's like, oh, let me drop you off at the party. And then let me go into the party and bring the journalist who I was trying to keep you away from. And then,
he's delightfully dopey, I think.
He was a little bit more than, he was crossing over the delightful line for me.
I find very endearing when he's walking with her out to find the car and he's like, do you know what that constellation is? And she's like, no, what? He's like, I was asking you.
Yeah.
He's like, I really don't know.
And I do think it's funny that her name was Gail Weathers and she like talked about how she, you know, should be a meteorologist or whatever, because I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but in LA we really did have a spat of people who had like
Dallas Rains.
We had Dallas Rains, Johnny
Jackson
Mountain,
Storm.
Like I forget who some of the other ones
were.
Johnny Mountain and Dallas Rains were the two main ones.
In Las Vegas, there was I believe Nathan Tannenbaum.
Oh, it's not about the weather.
It's Nathan.
True.
Well, I guess Tannenbaum's a Christmas tree, right? Oh yeah. Okay, fine.
They just have ridiculous names in general. They don't have to be weather related.
Yeah, but the Johnny Mountain and Dallas Rains were pretty classic LA ones at that moment. But
I do like that part when she gets punched. It's pretty great.
Yeah, it is good.
Neve Campbell is awesome in this movie.
She is.
She is. Also, like, is it a intentional pun that the like guy that is in jail for the mom's murder is named Cotton Weary? Like, I was like, is that like supposed to be a play on words?
I don't know.
Like he's caught and weary.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Maybe.
I wasn't quite sure. And then I also did entertain some ideas of that Gail Weathers was somehow in cahoots with Cotton Weary, but nah, not really.
Because she was writing the book and everything.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Another moment that I enjoy in this movie is when like they hear like, oh, like the principal's been gutted and he's hanging from the field goal, and then like, everybody runs out of the party like, oh, we gotta go see it before they take him down.
Yeah, we were watching that. I was like, that is so fucked up.
It's really bad. Yeah.
I was like, would I have been like that? I don't think so. I don't want to go see that.
Or when they're like, oh, school, all classes are canceled because there's some murder, and everyone's like, yeah, you know.
I know. You would think that, I don't know. Yeah, Stu's always excited and like, you know.
Well, I guess at this point, there's only been like one school shooting? There's been Columbine, but right? I don't. What year was Columbine?
I don't remember what year that was either.
I think Columbine was 99.
Oh, okay. So no school shooting. So they're like, oh yeah, a murderer running on the loose. Who cares?
It was like I did like rewatching it. I was like, I did think it was a little bit weird that it just seemed like everyone was just waiting for the next murder to happen and not like not really trying to solve anything. They were just like, well, even the reporters were like, there's been one murder so far. Who's going to be next?
Yeah.
I was like, that's so fucked up. But I guess that's
I feel like now if you tell the kids, like, classes are canceled, go home, there's a murderer, they're like, okay. And they all go and just do it because they're like, yep, it's Tuesday.
Yeah. Oh, God. That's rough.
So, we could talk about Dimension, the secret Weinstein label.
Oh, yeah.
Secret Weinstein label.
Under Disney.
What do you have to say about it?
I mean, I don't have a lot to say about it. And, I didn't watch Rose McGowan like telling the story videos because at some point I just was like, I don't want to watch this, but I read about it, and she was raped by Harvey Weinstein in 1997. So it was actually after this movie. So he was involved with this movie, but
he is listed as an executive.
Yeah,
producer.
but from what I was reading, even just like the general stuff about the development, it seems like Bob was actually a lot more the one
involved
kind of doing this one. Yeah. And then obviously both of their names got on everything. But yeah, it didn't seem like she even met Harvey until after the movie. And there was a Sundance incident in 97. So that sucks because you can't really watch it without like thinking about that, especially because their names are still like contractually right up front, and so you're like, oh, ew, gross, Weinstein, and then you see Rose McGowan, and you're like, oh crap, is that this? Is this when know? And that you used to spend the whole time thinking about that.
I had just recently watched She Said as well,
right?
And I was like, yeah, that was on my mind the whole time. I was like, oh god, is this when this happened? Like, I don't know all the details. Like, fuck.
And so I guess like, I don't know. I mean, it's just a movie. It's a piece of art from a particular moment. So I think it's probably okay to like still just enjoy the film. But yeah, I mean, especially knowing that it doesn't matter when it happened. But yeah, you do you become very preoccupied with like, oh wait, when is this? What was this? Like, there
were all these like, I watched the quick like behind the scenes, and they had like interviews. It was just like asking the cast and crew what their like favorite scary movie was, and there were all these like executive producers and stuff, and I was just like, are these some of the people that like didn't say anything and all this? I couldn't stop thinking about that, but it looked like, I mean, obviously those are on DVD extras, so they're not going to show anything weird, but I don't know. Seemed like the set was okay, but who knows? I don't really know.
I kind of wish we could just like erase him from history. Yeah. Wouldn't that be cool? But I think that's like illegal, right? To go back and take someone's name out of a movie just because we don't like them anymore.
I'm sure
you can't do that.
Although it's really
Wonder Woman 1984, we could wish it that way.
That's true. That's true.
But then we'd have to renounce our wish after. So you could
use the wishing star from Puss in Boots.
Ooh.
We're figuring this out. We're figuring it out.
Yeah. There's ways, you guys. There's ways.
But I guess one thing I did like about it was that because it was Miramax, there's like a billion Clerks posters and tapes in the movie all over the place. Like, which I'm like, I don't think any of these kids would have really been watching Clerks, but maybe.
But I mean, that's also like this movie's very 90s. There's there's wood paneling and TVs and video stores, but like it is kind of doing the Clerks thing of talking about movies within the movie in this meta way that I think was emerging at this time but had not happened in the horror genre.
Yeah.
I was watching this and I was like, oh my god, they're using Nick Cave, Red Right Hand. Oh yeah. This is going to be Tyler's favorite film.
Do you know what? Let's just talk about the soundtrack is one of those that I'm sure that everybody had the CD. And I was thinking like, oh man, was this this is a thought that I had as I was watching the movie, Justin. And I was like, was this the last great movie soundtrack? And then I was like, nope. And I actually know what it is. And it's one that you worked on.
Me?
Yes.
Like the Twilight stuff?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I think that is the last, like, soundtrack that people had on a CD
of like right, of like original songs.
Oh, on like
in the
physical
movie.
media. Well, I don't know. A lot of people like Black Panther.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
that one's pretty good.
Yeah.
No,
but also like
they're
like,
just
not even just original songs, just like licensed songs.
Right.
Yeah. It was much more of a thing in the 90s than it was.
Yeah.
Than it is now.
The one I had was Princess Diaries.
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Well, the other movie that came out in 96 that I definitely had the soundtrack for, and Justin did as well, was Space Jam. So.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God.
You're bugging.
It's such like Space Jam soundtrack referenced constantly. Yeah, this one had like a cover of Don't Fear the Reaper while they're getting busy in the beginning. You know, I was like, there's a moment where they use Schools Out
Oh yeah.
by Alice Cooper, and I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, you can't use the song like that anymore. It's too obvious. And there's a Moby track where I was like, oh, did this come out around the same time as The Bourne Identity?
Yeah.
Which was my thought. But yeah, and then like Marco Beltrami does the score, right?
It must have been kind of early in his.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Yeah, and they recently just like I think they recently just put out like vinyl of all the first few score because I think he does like I think he does almost all of them, but the score was very like, you know, like 90s industrials type stuff. It was all right. I don't know if I'd want to listen to it on vinyl.
Nah.
I almost bought it.
Do you want to listen to everything on vinyl?
I almost bought it, but I was like, do I like this score? I don't know. I don't remember the Scream score, so I didn't buy it. But yeah, I don't know. What else? Is there anything else, Eliz, that you wanted to mention that you were just like?
I don't think so. That was most of it. I mean, the camera stuff, Tyler, you talked about like the distortion or whatever, and I'm sure it was happening the entire time, but I didn't clock it like cognitively until like the Henry Winkler time. I think because maybe that one was like indoors in an office and a very like contained space.
I love that sequence though too. It's like it takes 5 minutes out of the movie for this little short film for Henry Winkler to be like,
but I'm sure that was happening even in the cold open and in the Campbell one, but because I didn't have a good idea of the geography of the homes, I just didn't notice it.
Yeah,
and then the Henry Winkler one, since it's such a small office, I was like, oh my God, the camera's all over, you know, like, whoa, this is so crazy. And then I was like, oh no, wait, they were definitely probably doing that the whole time, because then I started noticing it in every action scene.
Yeah, it's just like the whole movie's almost on fisheye. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And incredibly effective. Like it works great.
Although, why do you think that principal had so many changes of clothes in his closet? He had like a lot
Does
of
he
change
live
of
there?
clothes. I was kind of like, what is going on here? But oh well. And also, it was like, I understand now that they were being kid gloves with her because of what she went through with her mom. But when the police first interviewed her and she came to the principal's office, the way that he was like, hey, sweetie, and like touching her chin and like rubbing her shoulder, I was like, what is with this principal? Is he the creep? You know, but I think it just ended up was like, oh, right, they think she's going to fall apart any second. I get it now. Yeah, but.
Yeah.
Gross.
Well, he gets his comeuppance for being too harsh on the kids.
Yeah.
Does.
Does he?
Take that, principals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The kills are brutal in this movie, actually.
But yeah, before we get into a rating system, what is your favorite kill of this movie?
I mean, gosh, it's got to be the
cold open.
No, I was gonna say the garage door.
Yeah.
That's like the cold open is terrifying, and it's gross that they are just totally, you know, disemboweled and whatever.
Yeah.
Also, they like cut open that dude in the chair real quick.
Yeah, that's one thing my roommates were like, how did the guy do that? I'm like,
they turned the lights off and then it's like, turn him back on. And then he's like got his guts out and I'm like, oh,
well, it's not like he just sliced it and the guts were falling. The guts were like fully on display.
They're like sliced, blah, 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 blah.
It was intense. They're like, look again. Yeah. I think it's got to be the garage door for me.
I think it's cold open for me.
Cold open?
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't really.
The only other thing I was going to say is that I did go and watch like the start of Scary Movie. Sure. And we're talking about movies that you go back to and they're offensive. That's like number one I remember being like, these are the fucking funniest movies I've seen in my life back in the day. And I'm like, there's just constantly things you were like,
I mean, those movies are just like not built to last. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we ran into the same thing when we watched those freaking Naked Gun and, you know, because it's like, this is funny literally right then and barely even, you know, a year later. So
like the one cool thing is that like, I watched like the first, I watched maybe the first 20 minutes or so. And like the first like few scenes are like straight, like almost copies of Scream. And there are even like moments that they take like the lines like completely out of the original film. Cause it was also like, you know, Weinstein produced and Dimension release and stuff. So there's some funny stuff in the beginning and things that I remember cause I watched that back in the day. And then eventually it switches over to I Know What You Did Last Summer because this came out in 2000 or whatever. But it was a little bit, there's like some funny moments, but I was originally like, oh, it would have been fun if we like watched this and then watched Scary Movie. Nah, don't watch Scary Movie.
I don't think I ever saw him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you're not missing much. I just think it was interesting that there is like a 1-to-1 following of Scream for about the first 15 minutes or so, which is kind of fun, but that's about it.
I guess it's not a kill, but I did just like the two guys stabbing each other.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I don't know. Fun stuff. I always enjoy the two, like, this is the part where the killer like comes back to life for one last guy.
Yeah.
And he literally goes, shoots him right in the head.
Not in my movie. Although, why did she have to dress up like Ghostface?
That's what, I was like, why did she have to put the costume on to jump out like that?
Stab him with an umbrella.
I guess just to scare him, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, Tyler, go for it.
Okay. I guess how many Officer Dewey ice cream cones would you give?
That is so funny because he's just like, "What are you doing, Dewey?" And he's like, "I'm watching over the kids, but and then he like never explains why he went to get ice cream,
and it just eats it the entire time.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it is. Are you watching this?
It's pretty great.
You got ice cream? Yeah,
I found that scene hilarious.
I'm gonna give this I think 9. I'm gonna give it 9 Officer Dewey ice creams. I mean, like this is like a, you know, I guess it's not super modern anymore, but it's like a horror classic that like really going back like is still extremely enjoyable. You someone who like Eliz, who has seen a million movies and is watching it now for the first time, can still. Well, I guess I don't know your rating, but you can still find enjoyment in it, even though you also are probably a little bit aware of like all the parodies and everything.
Yeah.
It's just like really well crafted. Wes Craven at the top of his game, like bringing a new franchise to us, and it's still going this day and like still really successful. And I think that's a sign of how good this movie is. And I just like, it's really fun it's still really fun to watch. And I'm glad,
it's great.
Like I said earlier, that there's not like a bunch of things. There's not like a ton of things in it that make me go like, ew, I wouldn't want to watch this again or whatever.
It's a classic.
It's just really well done. There's things that apparently have been burned into my nightmares or whatever. And I just think that's a sign of a great horror film, and I love it.
Yeah. I will also give it 9 ice cream cones because I just didn't, I really just couldn't guess the ending, which is pretty unusual for me. And I think it really holds up like pretty well. And I think even all the things we've seen since then that are very meta don't diminish the, you know, achievements of this movie. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was overall just really clever, and I love all the meta stuff.
Sweet.
So.
Yeah.
Tyler?
We're going to go full triple 9s here.
Triple 9s.
It is 9 ice cream cones for me. And I think that it's just a really special movie. And you say, you know, Wes Craven at the top of his game. And it's like he did a bunch of stuff in the 80s. Like it was almost like a return. Like I think there were some people that were like, yeah, he's done. Let's have him do this movie and see what we can do. And it just tapped into, it's so current and of its time. It's so classic into everything that it taps into. It does a lot of stuff technically that I think is underrated of how it kind of made this new, it tied the old narrative filmmaking styles of those 70s slashers into something more modern that had... I'm pretty sure this was shot on film, but like it had some beginnings of digital language within it. And yeah, I just think that it's one of these things that's I'm always going to love when an old master comes in and says, this is how you fucking do a genre movie.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's like, I know he makes fun of, the Nightmare on Elm Street stuff. And like right before this, like 2 years before this, he had done New Nightmare. And then he did Vampire in Brooklyn and then came back for Scream in 1996. And I just like, yeah, I mean, just I know I already talked about this earlier, but just the fact that this came out on December 20th. And nowadays, if a horror movie came out on December 20th or anywhere near Christmas, people would be like, what are you doing? I think. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
There's not many horror movies coming out, and they're not going to come out and be a huge phenomenon at that time of year. Nowadays, it's like, oh, the ones you want to be like a big zeitgeist phenomenon, they come out in January or something. They're
Megan.
Exactly. Like no one's like, oh, the families are going to want to go see Scream on Christmas. And so the fact that this came out then and was like huge thing and is still going this day is like, that's just like right there. Like, oh my God, huge movie. I could have probably given it a 10. I don't know why I said no.
I was going to ask you guys what kept you from giving it a 10 because I know what I would say, but
I don't know. Honestly, I could probably give it a 10.
Yeah. I peer pressure.
Peer pressure.
Maybe just the thought of like, for me, the thought of was like, oh, should a 10 be like one of my favorite movies of all time or something? Like,
yeah,
we've given 10s before.
Yeah, we have. I think. I know it's not fair to judge, past movies by today's standards or whatever, but I do think there could have been somehow, just without beating you over the head with it, just a little bit more of a button on the sex thing and the and how she overcomes the fact that she had sex with this guy and somehow it could have been brought around just a little bit more. And then also and I think I'm probably more than 90% sure that some later movies in this franchise will deal with this, but yeah, if not Travis Travis is his name in Tremors, if Jamie Kennedy's character had like a black coworker who was like, and also it's stupid that you're all white and there's no black people in this town, and and that means I'm probably going to die for something like that. I think I'm pretty sure some of the later movies have black people, and we will get that commentary. But yeah, I mean, it does make sense that it would be this like podunk town and that they're all white. But yeah, the fact that no one fully mentioned it is
If you'll indulge me, I just want to tell a quick Wes Craven story.
Sure. Oh yeah, go for it.
The ArcLight, rest in peace, had a amazing filmmaker series where a director could pick whatever movie that they wanted to screen and then screen it. People could buy tickets, and then they'd do a Q&A afterwards with, like, maybe the director of that movie would be there, or maybe it would just be a conversation. And Wes Craven picked Children of Men and did a screening at the Dome at the ArcLight, and we all watched Children of Men. He sat in the theater, and we all watched it, and then he just talked about it with a bunch of film nerds for like, it was a 2-hour Q&A afterwards.
What?
And it's like, it's not even his movie.
Oh my God.
And talking about, the one takes and the wides and, everything that's happening there and the ending and how it's tied into his work. And it was just this,
this sweet,
beautiful gift of an evening. And
that's
he's
so cool.
He is a, he's passed.
I was going to say, it's a real bummer that he's no longer with us.
Yeah.
But it is just one of the more magical evenings that I've got to have in living in Los Angeles, and just a sweet guy who loved, the reason that this movie, I think, is what it is because he was that type of guy. He loves all of those movies. He loves everything that went into them, and was curious and respectful of the audiences that he was making things for, and wanted to make things that didn't insult their intelligence. And that is how you get to this meta horror that honors the past and plays with those expectations.
Mm-hmm. Well, luckily for us, we're going to be having lots more Wes Craven conversations as we
Wes Carpenter
conversation as we continue on, because he does direct some more of the sequels here, including Scream 2, which will be coming up next. And honestly, I was thinking about this. I was like, it's a little bit refreshing for us that we're on a franchise where it's just numbers. Just numbers, man.
It's just numbers.
It's not like Scream 2, Ghostface is back. Scream 2.
Scream 2, Screamier.
Yeah. I was like, there's no stupid subtitles. It's just Scream 2.
Scream 2, Death Whale.
Yeah.
Although
a Knives Out story or whatever.
And
mystery. A Knives Out mystery. Sorry. My bad.
And much like the Scream, most recent Scream to Scream 6, it is just 1 year later, 1997, Scream 2.
Right okay. Away. And have you seen that one, Tyler?
No.
Oh, okay.
What?
So yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Do you know anyone who's in it?
I'm assuming Nev Campbell's in it still. I don't know.
Oh, you're asking about 2. I'm still gonna say no.
No, I was like,
I bet we'll come back next week, and I'm like, oh yeah,
I was like,
oh, you know what? I do for sure, because there was a bunch of headlines recently about it, so I know that Jamie Kennedy is in it, and I know his fate because there was a bunch of articles about it for some reason recently. So that was spoiled for me. But yeah, I have no idea who the killer might be or why they're killing.
Yeah,
so.
Well, we're gonna find out. I think there's some iconic stuff in number 2 as well. So we'll see here when we come back next week talking about Scream 2 on our way up to Scream 6. If you're following along with us. And yeah, I think, if you guys want to watch Scream 2 to keep up, I think you do have to rent this one. I don't think it's streaming anywhere for now. If you want. Go to your local video store and rent it from Randy.
Yeah.
JK.
Indeed. And send us your suggestions for what we should do after this, or, if you want to come on and talk one of these, let me know. You can email us at sequelrights@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at sequelrights. I got to update the YouTube. We still have a lot of views on it, but really? I need to add more episodes.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. We need an intern.
Yeah. And please rate, review, or share this episode or one of your favorites out to your social network. Very much appreciated. It is people doing that spares you from having to listen to us read bad copy about a mattress to you.
That's right. Well, thanks for being here this week. And, don't worry, because we'll be right back.
You're breaking the rules.
Oh, breaking rules left and right. See you guys next week for Scream 2.
Take a little walk to the edge of town and go across the track, where the viaduct looms like a bird of doom as it ships and cracks, where secrets lie in the border fires and the humming wires. Yeah, man, you know you're never coming back. Across the square, across the bridge, across the mills, past the stacks. On a gathering storm comes a tall, handsome man in a dusty black coat with a red right hand.